Crow will be late. Dell is always late. Then we'll get him there by the time the prayer is done. If you're ready to go, he's not coming. He's excused. Are you ready? Okay. We gotta keep, oh, there we are. There's Crow. We gotta keep my reputation for efficiency here. All right. Meeting is called to order. We will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by prayer by the board chaplain. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, as we gather together, we praise you for this day and your purpose for it. We set our agendas as we sit in your presence, for you assure us that where two or more gather in your name, you are here. Recalibrate our intentions and refocus our hearts. You will for our lives does not always reflect our plans. Change them to reflect your will. Help us to understand that we don't need full clarity to walk into the unique purpose you've already inlaid in our lives. Lift our eyes to seek you first today and always, surrendering our need to achieve, understand, and be known. Shift our perspective to seek your peace above all else. In every situation we ponder in our daily lives, your commands give us renewed strength, godly courage to obey you without questioning. Forgive us for striving beyond our means, worrying, and forcing results. In this we ask, amen.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Masteler. He's not really the board chaplain for the new board members. You've seen the sheet, or has it, what's that? Oh, make sure you sign in. You need to push yes on your keypad and confirm. All right, there we go. Supervisor Dell, is he on his way as usual? Okay, he's usually here in about another minute or two. Supervisor Gillett asked to be excused, and the sheet, did the sheet come around for opening for saying prayer? Did that get around at some point? Oh, okay, there it is now. So sheet comes around, supervisors have the opportunity to say the opening prayer on a given month. If they sign up, if the policy is that if nobody signs up, I take it. And Supervisor Masteler is kind enough to sign up for a good number of these, so that works out. All right, so if Supervisor Masteler takes any more, he's going to be he will be the board chaplain, but that's okay. Moving along. Approve the county board agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Supervisor Swaggle, second by Supervisor Haskey. Is there discussion of the agenda, which you have before you? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Approval of the previous minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the previous minutes? Supervisor Kinnard, Supervisor Langto, second. Any discussion or correction on those minutes? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Citizen input? None? Does anyone wish to speak to the board? Are there any who wish to speak to the board? Does anyone wish to speak? All right, appointments. We have appointments listed there. Are you ready for those? Let's take them all together.
The Business Development Loan Program Review. Ben Nelson, Jim Lemack, Tim Tremmel, Dan Vincent, Paul Kunish, and Jeff Woznicki. Kewaunee County Land Information Council, Tammy Mullick, Jack Novak, Matt Josky, Mike Andrashko, Steve Vida, Jermaine Bertrand, Michelle Dax, Brian Dax, Chris Van Urim, Tracy Nolenberg, Todd Every, Davina Boness, Scott Felt, Ross Loining, and Dave Myers. And Board of Adjustment for Shoreland and Floodplain Zoning, Justin Hack, Tom Cornett, and Gary Ledbina.
Extremely impressive list of appointments. Do I have a motion for all of those? Supervisor Augustine, second by Supervisor Swagel. Do we have discussion? Any questions on those? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Other reports, we have the administrator, Mr. Feld, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the sheriff will come up, I thought what we would do with the jail strategy subcommittee, the members and staff and architect and cost estimator have spent numerous months looking at floor plans and cost estimates and the like. The subcommittee has approved a final design for the facility. And we've also then done the cost estimate and what we would believe would be the impact. I thought that the sheriff and I would kind of do a dynamic duo where the sheriff can help to provide some of the facility and the process. I can talk about the finances, and then we can try to answer any questions you may have. And then if there's additional information or concerns that county board members will have, then we can try to get that information for you. You are not voting on anything tonight regarding the jail. This is what I would call the unveiling, since it was just a week ago Friday that the designs were approved. So we look at as a tentative schedule that we hope to have the architect and cost estimator come to the June meeting to be able to talk about design and cost estimates, and then have a decision in July as to whether the board wants to move forward with issuing debt or whether they would like to move forward and putting it to referendum. And if putting it to referendum, then also having the referendum language. But that's a little bit farther down the road. What we want to do right now is just start the education and information process. So if you would like, Sheriff, you can start us off.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Kind of an update. It's been a while. This goes back quite a while before we really give a comprehensive update. Really, the last time that we stood in front of you was when we were transitioning from phase 2 to phase 3, and the decision was made, you know what, maybe we need to do somewhat of a smooth or slower transition into that phase 3. So we've been meeting on a regular basis with the newly formed jail strategy committee. And really the big news of all of it is we looked at what we had come forward with in those early days, realizing the tax impact, realizing really the economy, how that has changed over the last 2 years, and said, okay, let's look at some serious needs versus wants. When we came into this, typically we toured a lot of facilities, Green Lake, Iowa, Florence, Dorr, I'm going to forget, Calumet. We've been all over the place. And typically when we approached it, you have a jail, you usually have the sheriff's department offices, patrol, evidence, typically that's kind of how you build when you build a safety building. But we realized very quickly that we had to approach this from a different dimension, right? So we basically said, let us strip away everything that isn't connected to the actual need. And what is the actual need? What have we been harping on for the last how many years? It's the jail. So we stripped it down, removed anything and everything that wasn't connected to the jail. By doing so, and I give a lot of credit to the county board members that are on this committee, to Mr. Feld, to Mr. Kunish, to everybody, that we stripped away this thing, $10 million. We dropped it down 10 million because we were able to refine it down to absolute needs. Now we're at a very fine line there because you can take that too far, right? You can even take a good thing too far. So we have to be careful not to cross that line of saving into dysfunction. All right, because there are jails across the state that cross that line. And then a few years later, they're spending more millions to try to rectify some short-sighted decisions. So I, again, give credit to our county board that we approached that line. And that's where we said, okay, this is it. This is bare bones. So that being said, we are also approaching it very uniquely from operations. The last time we talked about staffing. There was always two parts to this. We knew that if we couldn't capture this under current operating budget or levy, that would have to go to referendum. So we went back to the drawing board, again, continued to visit a lot of sheriff's departments. And really the eye opener was Iowa County. We went for a little road trip to Iowa, and they had a different staffing model than others had. And we looked at that and we really drilled down it and said, I think we can make that work here in Kewaunee County. That saved us some staff that now gets us under that operational limit that we were hoping to find, right? So that's a game changer there, that we're able to bring operational costs down into a place, and Mr. Feld will talk about that, within our current operating budget, right? Within, it's palatable that we're not having to go over it and thereby have to go to referendum for that part. The other part I would say is this, this is a moment in time. This is a moment in time as far as where we stand with the options that Scott's going to put forth of some of the things that we're going to apply to it to bring that bonded amount down, as well as the costs. All these things are culminating. And I really think we're at a point in time where we have to embrace this. We have to do this and move forward, because a lot of these things are a window of opportunity. And if we don't grab this window of opportunity, things are going to change, costs are going up, and we're not going to be able to present the same numbers that you see in front of you. So we're doing our best to act with urgency and yet be, respectful of your time and your ability to be part of this project. I don't want to remove this beyond where you're comfortable, but I do want to be honest that we have to look at this as far as our window of opportunity and where all these stars are aligning. I guess at that point, again, talking about operations, we've done some great things there. We stripped it down. I'm going to stay in the basement of the courthouse. The evidence building stays up at the clock shop. It would have been nice, yes, but it's not a need. And I think that's the theme that we've gone with through this entire thing, is that we stripped away everything that was an absolute necessity. But that's where we are now. We're at critical mass, right? Everything we're doing at that jail, this isn't an option that we can kick down the road and forget about for another 20 years. I've got the study up here from 2002, right? We don't have that luxury again. We're at critical mass in that jail. We have to do something. And I'm just so grateful that a lot of these pieces are all falling into place that we can move this forward. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Scott.
Thank you, Sheriff. Just to give a little bit of perspective as to kind of the history of this program. I started with the county in 2015, February of 2015. And going back, and I have half a box of papers dealing with the jail and this project. April 29th of 2016 is when the National Institute of Corrections came and did a jail assessment of our jail facilities and had recommended that we need to look at replacing the current facility. Since that time, we have contracted with Venture Architects, and they've done numerous presentations. In fact, they had 6 different presentations in 19. They had 4 different presentations in 20. They had 1 or 2 in 21. And when we start to come, next month, they'll be coming again before this board to talk about the design and the process. As the sheriff had said, we've toured many jails: Iowa, Trempealeau, Dorr, Calumet, Green Lake, Florence, Oconto. We've been on the road a lot to look at the different facilities and see how they operate their jails, both from a staffing standpoint as well as from a design standpoint. So what we have done is we've tried to look as much as possible, and the county board members have done an excellent job of trying to work on what are the essential functions of the jail, and let's go there. So the question really comes down to, what's the cost? We can show you the design, and some of you have in front of you the renderings. You don't have the floor plans themselves. We will lay them out after the board meeting for you to come and take a look and ask us questions. But the reason why we're not handing them out is this is a facility, a locked facility, that we don't necessarily want everyone to know exactly where everything is in our jail facility. So, but we can show you the general design. It's just, we're not going to give you something to take home. So if you remember back in 2020, when the first jail committee had come in, they had done the analysis, and the option 7, as it was both a jail facility, a sheriff's department, and an evidence building. And that was roughly between $32.1 and $35.5 million. And once that number came out, there was, after everyone's jaw was picked up off the floor, we looked at it and go, we need to re-examine. So we did that, and we looked at it, and we, as the sheriff said, we brought this down to just the jail project. And back in October of 2020, that was $20.3 million. We took took off and focused on what needed to be done. And we continued to look at space needs, and we were able to reduce things even more. Then what happened, which is probably the dearth of any type of capital project, things started to linger and take longer before decisions were made. And as you well know, construction costs have gone up, building costs have gone up, interest rates have gone up. So we look at the current cost estimate of the jail, which is roughly about 41,000, between 40 and 41,000 square feet. That's $25.5 million is the cost estimate. So to then go with, okay, Scott, how's that going to affect us from a tax standpoint? Well, as county administrator, I've known that this has been on the horizon for a number of years. And just like you do at your home, if you know that you're going to have to be buying a car in the next few years, you try as best as you can to put a little money away, so that way the outright expense of buying a new car is not as big because you've been saving a little bit of money. We've done the same here at the county. But before I even go to that, I want to talk about operations and what we've been doing there. We'll be going from a facility that is currently rated at 22 beds, going to a facility that is 52 beds, expandable to 85. Now remember, this is to last us 50 years. We have an average daily population in the high 30s, closer to 41. So we believe that the growth over decades, that this will be able to house our inmates for the next 5 decades. Now, with a new facility, there are additional costs. So you have to heat a bigger building. You will have more staff that is needed. You have more space to clean. Because you have more inmates, you have more food you have to feed them. You have more uniforms you have to clean. So there are those costs. And with the finance director and I, we have estimated that additional cost to be between $600,000 and $700,000 additional each year, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But again, because of being fiscally prudent, I estimate and project that we can cover those costs and incorporate it into our existing budget. Now, the first thing you're going to say is, Scott, how can you do that? And I'll give you a few reasons why. Again, fiscal responsibility. Last year, we collected about $1.4 million in sales tax. But we only budgeted for this year 1.2. We never budget to every single dollar. Why? Because if things go down, then that puts us in a precarious spot. So we believe that we can take some of that sales tax revenue that we haven't been budgeting and put that towards these additional operational costs. In that same respect, what we have done is that in the Human Services Department, the county used to have to make what are called subsidized guardianship payments to the tune of roughly about $93,000 a year. Recently passed that now the state will be making those payments, not the county. So that's another $93,000. We had looked at budget tightening. We believe we can do that at another $90,000. And finally, in addition, we have staffing changes that we'll be doing. We know that with the additional costs, roughly between about $680,000, that includes roughly 5.5 staff. 5 jailers dispatchers, and a half-time maintenance person to clean the facility. So how do we then pay for that staff? Well, the way we do it is that if there are vacancies that are not critical at this present time, we will leave them vacant, and we will use that allocated money to therefore budget and be transitioned towards those jailers and dispatchers. I believe over the next 4 years, because it doesn't have to happen this year, because the jail will not become operational for a minimum of another 2.5 years, that over the next 2 to 3 years, that I believe that we will have at least 3, if not 4 or 5 staff where we will have vacancies that we will be able to utilize that. In addition, I want to give some kudos and some commendations to the sheriff and his staff. Because when we were first having this conversation, I was saying to the sheriff, okay, sheriff, how many staff do you need to staff this new facility? And he said very confidently, 8. And I said to him, sheriff, I can't fund 8 staff members. It's just not possible. And he said, okay, Scott. And so what they did is Lieutenant Van Aram and Chief Deputy Vaser and the sheriff went down to Iowa County, and they looked at how they were staffing their facility. And if we mimic how Iowa County staffs their facility, we can therefore save 2 positions. So that would be, instead of 8 positions needed, we only need 6. And I said, sheriff, you got to work with me. And while I don't suggest trying to twist any law enforcement personnel's arm at all, I did squeeze pretty hard on the sheriff and said, sheriff, I can do 5. And he said, Scott, I'll make it work. We'll try our best and we'll see what happens from there. So I believe that we can find the staffing. I believe that we can find the operational increases into our current budget, which means we do not need to go to referendum. And I believe we can operate efficiently and safely. So that's the operations part of it. Next comes the building. So the building right now, the cost estimate is $25.5 million. Again, because we were looking to the rainy day and looking to the future. We currently, and you were actually doing some of this tonight through some of our financial policies, we have, whenever we have budget surpluses, we take a portion of that surplus and we put it into our debt service fund. So that way we can prepay existing debt. Or if we're going to issue debt, we can use that to reduce the amount of debt that we are issuing. So I'll kind of go through the numbers. You have $25.5 million as the cost estimate. We still have $1.8 million of ARPA funds that can be used towards the project. We have $700,000 of debt service. So 1.8 and 0.7 is 2.5. And because of our frugality and our fiscal responsibility, of which I commend department heads and Mr. Kunish and the board, as well as the Human Services Department, because they are no longer in deficit, they are now in surplus. I feel very comfortable in using $2 million of general fund balance to now make that, instead of 25.5 million, to make that $21 million, do a debt issue of $21 million. Again, Scott, that's all well and good, $21 million. What does that mean to me? What that means, again, working with Paul and with our financial advisor, is that if we do a 20-year debt issue of $21 million, the cost on the tax bill for an assessed home of $200,000 is $40.63. Not $40.63 a month, $40.63 a year. In other words, let's call it less than a tank of gas. Yeah, I don't believe that you're going to find a building that you can finance cheaper. This is, we're doing this, but I also want to be careful because I know that there could be other capital needs in the future. So again, I am not putting all of our eggs into one basket, that if something were to happen, whether to this building or another building, and we need to do some repairs, that there is something still available, that we still have that flexibility. But again, $21 million, $40.63 for 200,000. I could break it down to $100,000 home, but I think in this day and age, a $200,000 home seems to be more the better benchmark than the $100,000 home. Again, I want to really emphasize to the board about the frugality and the responsibility that we've had to try to make this as economically and fiscally responsible as we can, as well as commend the sheriff in that from a staffing standpoint and an operation standpoint, we're continuing to try to operate a facility with as much efficiency as possible from a staffing level, because staffing is what really drives costs of a building, not the building itself. It's the staffing. So last but not least, so there will be questions to you, not tonight, but in the coming months regarding whether the county should issue the debt or whether they should move forward and go to referendum. And I just want to give a historical perspective. From a historical perspective, the county has done numerous capital projects throughout its lifetime, and it has never gone to referendum. Back in November of 2011, the fairgrounds project. In September of 10, the fairgrounds project. The Human Services and Public Health Building did not go to referendum. The courthouse renovation and landfill improvements never went to referendum. The buying and renovation of this building never went to referendum. Even all the way back to 1980, I went as far back as I could find. The renovation of the courthouse back in 1980 did not go to referendum. You have the ability to move forward without having to go to referendum if you so choose. The reason that I recommend not going to referendum is that what we've been seeing over is that as time goes forward, the price goes up. We had it at one time that we had the cost as $19.7 million. But then construction costs went up, wood went up, cement went up, interest rates went up, and we did not significantly change the project. In fact, we've made even more cuts, and so we're now at 25.5 million. I could go on, but I would much rather have the sheriff and I available to answer any questions you may have, or if there's concerns, that way we can get additional information for you as well.
Couple of points. That 25 million, just to make sure to highlight to the board, the work of the committee that has been done on this. With inflation, with costs, that would be 40 to 45 is where we would have been. We did get this down to 25. And I just want to head off because I know that this will come up. It always does. What if we cut the size of the jail down substantially? Because 85 beds, people look at that and think, why do we need something that enormous? That was studied at length. I'm saying this largely for the benefit of the new members. That was studied at length and was discussed at length, and you would save on a project of this scope and magnitude, cutting it essentially in half would save about $1 million. So that just does not make sense. I mean, whether you approve of the idea or not, or you approve of the jail or whatever, the idea of cutting it down substantially for a savings of about $1 million makes no sense. And the schedule, as I said, when we had this last jail study committee meeting, we're going to be as transparent as absolutely possible as we have been throughout this entire project. Later on, I will actually be asking if we can change the June meeting date so I can be there, unfortunately, to June 14, but Samuel's group would be available, but we'll take that up later. But we will be contacting the media following this meeting. We will make sure when we have those dates set that we get out there to the public. I am going to recommend, when we get to that later in the agenda, that we will need to, in my opinion, we should move to the fairgrounds so that for the June and July meetings, so that we can accommodate the public, whoever wants to be there for the presentation. We want to make sure that people are aware that this is what is being considered. Not saying the board, I don't know how you're going to vote, but we need to make sure that everybody is aware of that. This project has been very transparent. I can assure you that it will continue to be transparent. And I want to make sure that, that the public is fully aware and that they have the opportunity to contact their supervisors, speak to them at the meeting, and track them down at home should they so choose. No. Well, they know where to get a hold of you. You guys are all, this isn't Washington DC. You guys are all available. They stop you on the streets. At least if you're like me, I know that they do. So that's the thought process. That's the plan I laid out, is that we would present this information to you here tonight. We can get whatever questions you might have for Mr. Felt and the sheriff. Next month, there's going to be a presentation by the builder, by Samuel's group, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of that individual. Hopefully, members of the public will choose to attend as well. And then in July, there will be a July meeting this year. I'm assuming that that's going to be the decision of the board later. There's going to be a decision by this board, how you wish to proceed. Supervisor Vollenweider?
If I may, I'm sorry, if I may, I want a quick follow-up on something that the chair said, which I think is extremely important as well. Is the thought about currently, the current jail is rated at a bed capacity of 22 beds. And we have 2 staff members that oversee 22 beds. With the new facility, with 52 expandable to 85, the number of staff members that will therefore oversee 52 beds expandable to 55 is 2 people. Again, because of how we design and because of the professionalism and the training of the staff, we are able to have a larger facility and still adequately oversee additional inmates, which from a cost and an operation standpoint is better for the county as well. I apologize, Supervisor Vollenweider.
No problem. Thank you. I just had a couple things. First, I had our next month's meeting down that we were scheduled to meet at the highway shop.
Yeah, that's going to need, and that'll come up. We have it on the agenda, when we set the meetings on point 16, and that's going to need to be changed
Okay,
because of the events. And I've already talked to Supervisor Poppy about that. I didn't talk to Mr. Every. My apologies, but you may get rescheduled a little bit. I hope that doesn't upset you.
the other thing that I just wanted to reiterate for the benefit of some of the new members is the prior county board did determine unanimously that the need for a new jail was necessary. So that was unanimous by the prior board, just for everybody's information.
Yeah, the issue here is going to be, I don't think there's anything further to be done on the project itself. We have spent untold hours on this when I took over as chair just over 2 years ago now. I guess I didn't realize I would become quite so educated in jails and jail facilities and all of the rest of it that comes with it, but that's fine. But I can say, in my opinion, my strong opinion is that this project cannot be ground down any further. I mean, this is the project. I mean, either you want this project or you don't, but as far as changes to it, we have spent an unbelievable number of hours with the builder and the architect, and I simply do not see, and we've already found savings that, the architect and the builders have said, or they're talking the Kewaunee model now. We have found savings and innovations that, were unique to our situation. I don't see that we can find anything further on the project. So either this is the project. Either you want this or you don't, or either you feel this goes to referendum or you don't, but I don't see additional savings on the project. I do not believe that they are out there. All right, other questions? Sorry, take up so much time on that. All right. Supervisor Mastler is even unusually quiet tonight.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
I
well,
did,
no need to apologize. We're just,
I don't have a question, Chairman, but I do have a statement, and I had the privilege to serve on both of the jail, the first and second jail committees. And I'll tell you, we did a lot of work and we met a lot of hours. I give a lot of credit to the sheriff's department, to Sheriff Josky, to all of his command staff. They met countless times to chip away and find whatever cost savings they could find. And I don't see, like yourself, there's just nothing left to, we beat on we cut the bushes, we were beating the bushes, we found every cost savings that we can. I'm thankfully Scott and Paul have been able to come up with a number that it is affordable to all of us. And I certainly hope that every supervisor will back it.
and the other thing people need to understand is, a lot of this isn't dictated by us. It isn't dictated by that. I mean, it isn't dictated by the county, it's dictated by the state. They set standards and that's it. It's beyond our control. There are some things that those that are on the committee will know that there are not some things, there are a lot of things I find extremely frustrating, but they're beyond my control. Other questions? Supervisor Patricia, I'll come to you next. Yeah, or come to Supervisor Kroll next. Supervisor Patricia.
I do apologize if this question's been answered, but as a new member, not privy to all of the previous discussions, you mentioned that, Sheriff, you initially wanted 6 new staff and that you find it workable to do it with 5. Is that a realistic number, or is that something that we're trying to do just to make sure the numbers work?
It is, I mean, as the chairman said, we have literally been kind of time stamped across the state as a Kewaunee model, not only with the building, but the way we're staffing this thing. When we first embarked upon this 7 years ago, we brought in a consultant. We also brought on a staffing analyst, right? They brought this gentleman in from some other part of the country, and he sat down and said, all right, I do these all over the country. Here's what I think you need for staffing. We pretty much in short order asked him, or not even really asked him not to come, but after we explained to him our limitations, he never showed up again. We pretty much had to push that person aside because what we were about to embark upon was in violation of every standard staffing model out there. But it's okay, right? So a good example is booking, right? Typically by staffing standards, you have a booking officer. So you have master pod, you got rove. We need at least 1 dispatch. We should have 2. And then we've got this booking. Well, we realized we're not booking people in constant. So there's an opportunity for an efficiency. So when that person is not actively booking, we can then transition them into dispatch, or just the opposite. We actually have our 2 dispatchers, and that backup one can then book. When it's done, get back in. That's something we can throttle. An officer's coming in with an arrest, we can hold that, right? So let's say there's a barn fire, there's a 911. We can tell that arresting officer, stand fast. We'll get through what we're going through, bring in your booking. So, it's running it that tight that we're going to look at every minute of every day. What are the trends? What are we doing? And then how can we most effectively map out that staffing, right? We've got movement we have to take care of, transports around the state, movement to the courts, and so we're going to be creative. We're already using our investigators, right? I've gone on transport. My jail lieutenant has gone on transports. So those are the kind of creative things we're doing to try to make this all happen. And we're glad to do it. I think it'll work. Now, the big thing is in 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever. Yeah, we'll always have to revisit, right? You want to kind of debrief and say, oh, yeah, how are we doing? Last thing we want to do is build this thing, open it, and say, okay, forever rest your peace. I mean, that's an ongoing conversation, right? And I'm looking forward to that. But no, the operational costs and the conversation we've had, I'm comfortable that we're going to be able to get into this, staff this effectively. It's going to take all hands on deck, no doubt, right? This is not going to be an easy kind of No, we are going to be actively engaged in every essence of this. But I think that's what we owe to the taxpayers.
And I'll give another example, Supervisor Patricia. Currently, we don't have, if you go to most county jails, they have dispatchers and they have jailers. And ne'er shall the two ever meet. In our county, we're one of less than a handful that has jailer dispatchers. So we will continue to employ that model to a certain degree, in that we will have some jailers that are just jailers. We will have some dispatchers that are just dispatchers, but we will also have jailer dispatcher positions. Why? There's more flexibility. It also allows upward mobility from those that are jailers or dispatchers. That allows them, if they want to therefore earn a higher wage, they can therefore apply. And if, according to sheriff staff, if they believe that they are able to do it, they can become jailer dispatchers, which again allows booking to go into dispatch, allows dispatch to go into booking, allows that flexibility, because again, we are a small county. And that's probably the most difficult part. I have a lot of discussions with small rural counties and I have discussions with populous counties. And what happens a lot of times is that with the populous counties, there's enough workload in one specific job that that's all that staff person has to do. Well, in Kewaunee County, we're a little bit different. We don't always have enough for just one person to do something. So there has to be some flexibility there. And the sheriff and the staff have done an excellent job of being able to do that, which again means we do not have to hire additional staff. And just as a back of the envelope type of number, a starting jailer dispatcher is at $28.68. I forget exactly. If you then include WRS retirement, health benefits, dental benefits, FICA, workers' comp, you're coming close to $100,000 a year. So every additional staff person that you don't have to hire is a significant savings, which is again why the staffing part is so important. I'll give a different example. And again, this is something new that a lot of places don't do. The sheriff talked about the booking area. So usually what happens is if a person comes in and they've been brought into the jail, they're booked and they're put into a holding cell in the booking area. They put on a jail uniform, they go through all of that, and they sit in the booking area. Well, if you have one person in the booking area, you have to have a staff person there as long as that person is in that booking area. Well, if we have empty cells within the jail housing pod, and depending on how the classification works, it will be better for us from a staffing standpoint to move that person that was into booking into a designated cell block, which we would use as holding cells. And now those two staff that are already designated to oversee the housing pod can also see the booking person, which means we've saved staff or at least allowed for more flexibility of staff. Again, I can't say enough about how the sheriff and his staff have worked to try to be flexible and look at it and not rigid where we say we only do this. We do this because we live here. We want to be responsible to our taxpayers. So I hope that answers your question.
Supervisor Kroll, if you still remember.
Yep. It was about the staffing also. A lot of questions out in the community were, why are we adding so many more staff? What are their positions going to be? That was one big thing. And the other one was about the expansion from the 22 beds that we have going up to the 52, then expanding to the 85. But Pastor, you did talk about that and, that savings are, why we would do what we would do.
The building part is easy. I mean, for roughly $1 million, it just makes no sense. I mean, and the other people on the committee, we talked about this at length, and for roughly $1 million, I want to say it was close to half. I mean, the capacity would drop down. That on a project of this scope, that just makes no sense. The staffing part, again, that's due to the fact that the current, the model that we operate by currently, we're grandfathered into in a new facility. You cannot do it. Now, there's a lot of arguments by the sheriff especially that the current model shouldn't be going on. And that is where we have a dispatcher and we have a jailer. That's it. So each serve as each other's backup, which, you know, you think about that, if there's some sort of an emergency going on in the county, dispatch needs help, nobody's attending to the jail. So, and, you know, it could be vice versa too. You know, you really don't, when you're calling 911, you really don't want to get, you don't want it to go to voicemail, you know. So the sheriff, you know, argues strongly against that model, and it isn't really relevant because if you're going to build a new jail, you can't have that model. The jail inspector, of course, she's been involved in many of these meetings, and she disagrees with most or much of what we do in the county as far as current operations. And in a new facility, you wouldn't be grandfathered, and those practices wouldn't be permitted. So they're just not possible. And the sheriff, of course, you know, would argue very strongly, as would the jail inspector, that our current operation is unsafe and shouldn't be done. So that's the answer.
And I would point on, you're absolutely right, sir. And I would say the only thing I would add is in the new configuration, the goal initially was to separate those two worlds, as Administrator Felt said, right? Typically, in fact, in almost every other county in the state, is you have dispatch and you have your correctional staff, right? But we realized that we're not going to have that luxury, right? So that was a lot of these savings. We started talking about grinding down on these staffing numbers. We realized we can't do this partying of the ways anymore. There's still going to have to be that integration because we got to save those positions. So are we necessarily doing jailer dispatchers? Yes, that they're going to be trained up to do both, but we're not going to have the dispatch 4 feet from a booking counter where people are fighting with inmates. We have to separate those worlds for that reason. So that's why there is a slight uptick, because even though we are going to be still multi-purposing our staff, we do have to have that dispatch isolated, secured, right? And then that booking officer is able to float in there, but we can't just leave that open willy-nilly. And we can't blend dispatch into master control where you're multitask like, well, am I watching inmates? Am I answering 911s? You know, we had to separate that as much as we could. It could have been separated more, which would have really drove up those staffing numbers. But we found a very, you know, comfortable place where we could say, we're going to split this just this far, you know, to still be able to address the concerns the jail inspector had, but be able to keep these staffing numbers down. Your question about 22. So yes, we're at 22. Our ADP, our average daily population. Now I always use the phrase pre-COVID because ever since COVID, our local criminal justice system is pretty much on its ear, right? I mean, when COVID started, it shut down. They literally canceled all the hearings. Nobody's sentenced. They just went into a freeze frame. Probation and parole locked up. So our numbers completely went all over the map. Of course, then our dear judge passed away. So we're going to have you know, this new chapter in Kewaunee County. We're finally going to get our local criminal justice system back on its feet. Prior to COVID, though, we were touching over 40 ADP in a 22-bed facility. So I have no doubt we're going to quickly rise back to there. So when we talk 40, that's not enough to just say, okay, you have 40 people, 40 beds. We then got classification because you can't put sentence with pre-sentence. You can't put you know, one suspect with another might be a witness to this. It's all commingled. We have to have various degrees of classification by state law. And now you throw in the things of, well, I identify as this, I identify as that. Well, that creates more sectors of classification. So that 40 people requires then a greater amount of cells because you have to start parceling them out to maintain classification. That being said, that 52 is a solid number to be able to do that in today's date. So we're not building at the 52 for like 20. That's today. That's here and now. And then the 85 is what's projected out for 50 years. The beauty of it, as Administrator Feldman, I think the chairman touched on, as we grow as a community, and I'm not talking in our age, I'm talking our children's age and our grandchildren's age, as this population continues to grow, and make no doubt it will continue to grow, all we've got to do is add bunks to a wall. We don't have to pour concrete, and we don't have to add staff. That's the real vision of this, is that we're setting the table for future generations. We're taking care of where we are in the here and now with one eye on the next generation. Because the last thing I want is my grandkids, and I'm sipping yogurt and some CBRF going, Grandpa, what the hell were you guys thinking? Right? Let's instead have them say, man, thank you. Thank you for having the vision back in 2022 and 2023 to actually lay the roadmap for what we now have to deal with in 2040, right? That's where there has to be that vision. So we've got to be careful not to just, be thinking right in front of our face. We've got to look forward. Does that answer your question?
I want to provide one example of why this is important. Currently, if we have a female inmate, they are not housed at our facility. We send them to door because from a space standpoint, classification standpoint, we can't have, we can't because of the regulations. We send our female inmates to Door County, of which they charge us $52 a day. So if you take 52, and so let's say that you had, and let's say it's not even the same person, but you have a female inmate, one female inmate for a year in Door County, that's $19,000 a year of additional cost that the county has to pay to house that female inmate in another county's facility. And that's not including if we have to do transports and things like that. So what this does by having a slightly larger facility, but a responsible one, it allows us to address those issues and to be able to house our own, which therefore saves us those additional costs.
And I want to add, just for the sake of the new members, because we've been through this for 7 years. So we tried to, slice this apple every direction. So one of the things was, why not just farm everything out? We do the numbers. So it's not even sometimes necessarily about the money or the staffing. Those counties aren't beholden to us. So I reached out to all of our adjacent counties, even those that are not adjacent, saying, hey, would you take our inmates? And they said, absolutely. The ones we want, when we want them. And these are the cases where we get people that are wiping fecal matter on the walls, where they're urinating on themselves, where they're causing injury to people. All right. I can't reach out to another county and say, hey, would you take this one? All right. They're going to say, love you, Matt, but no. So in the end, even this idea of housing and boarding, right, it's very limited because in the end, that county has to worry about its county, just like we have to worry about our county. So that option quickly got exhausted because it wasn't necessarily even about the money, the daily costs and everything. It's the fact that any of these other facilities could basically just turn us down cold. And if we're not prepared to take care of our own, we're putting ourselves in a bad situation. So it's two parts to that question when people talk about the housing of inmates and everything.
And I heard this new judge is a hanging judge. Supervisor Vollenweider.
So without getting too much into the operational side, we had talked discussions earlier about the staffing being a levy and a referendum requirement. So we're not addressing that right now. So what happens next year and we need to add 2 more staff or something? It's like, this model just isn't working. We need to add that staff. What's that going to look like?
No, I mean, we would not embark upon this if we were just saying, hey, we think, we're not going to play smoke and mirrors and say, let's just embark upon this and wink, wink. No, this is an honest evaluation of what we think we can effectively run this jail into the foreseeable future. Now, can I project out 10 years, 5 years? No, I can't. I don't know what might come our way, but I'm saying that yes, in the operations, as we're looking at it with the number of staff and making some concessions internally, as far as who's going where and who's working what, this is a feasible option, a model going into the foreseeable future.
Thank you for that.
I would say it this way. The sheriff would have a view that more would be better. I would have a view that less would be better. We meet in the middle and we think we can make it work. And that's not lip service. We think we can make this work.
All right, other questions? All right, thank you.
One last thing, Mr. Chair. Again, I encourage all of you that haven't, the sheriff is always willing to provide you time to look at the current facility, to look at the floor plans and ask any type of question you may have.
Overnight
Please-
visits?
I'm sorry?
Overnight visits are encouraged?
In your case, you are already a return customer, Supervisor Vollenweider, so I don't think we have to worry about that with you. But with others, the sheriff is more than willing to provide tours, answer any questions. The staff is willing to as well. And if it comes down to financing and the like, again, myself or Mr. Kunish are also always available. So please avail yourselves at any time and we will make time for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry,
One
Sheriff.
thing. So, and one thing, we talked a lot about community outreach, and I hope everybody can appreciate the extent of the community outreach that has been going on for 7 years. I've been writing weekly articles on it. I've been on the TV, I've been on radio, I've done print, I've done social media. So we're doing our best, right? At each phase, giving what we can, offering what we can at the time without overstepping. I have provided my cell phone number so many times I can't even think of how many times in every venue, which you won't find any other sheriffs doing. I guarantee you, right, that you're not gonna find a sheriff putting his personal cell number in the newspaper saying, please call me with input. Do I get a lot? Unfortunately, no. I wish I would. I get a lot of calls on this thing, but it's not necessarily, it's different issues. But yeah, I mean, I would welcome a call. My cell phone is out there anytime of the day or night, please. Because in the end, if you're going to make a choice based on solid decision, I respect that. But what would be a true crime is to make a decision in a vacuum. So let's make sure that we all understand this as well as we can, and anything I can do, I will continue to do that. Everybody got the recent article I emailed to everybody? I emailed each of you that most recent article that I sent out to the community with really what you heard tonight about the impact on the tax, the cost of the project, the operational impacts. I'm trying to put that out as often as I can out to the community. Last night, we were at the Towns Association meeting, very well received, very well received. People get it. People get it. And I know we're not, and again, we're not going to get to everybody. I'm going to be in Franklin on the 1st. So we're going to be hitting all these meetings as much as I can and still stay married. So we're going to do our best to try to get this over the finish line.
All right. Moving on to committee reports, I'm going to take all of these together. Are there any questions on any of the minutes that you should have reviewed? Supervisor Teske?
How come we don't hear anything anymore about Kewaunee County Economic Development Corporation?
That was, well, you want to answer that, Supervisor Poppy? Turn your mic on, please.
I guess basically because we deal with the private sector and some of the information is not to be put out in front of everybody until it's a sealed deal. So I think that's the main reason. We work with people trying to get loans, grants, and these businesses do not want publicity over them trying to get these loans or publicity. Does that answer your question?
Do we still have the same director?
Yes, Ben Nelson.
And he was gonna come at least quarterly to give an update, and he hasn't been, I think he's only given one report.
I think he is scheduled, isn't he?
He is scheduled. I know that he had reached out to me and to the chair, and it has not, from a scheduling standpoint, worked out recently, but he is wanting to come to the board and give another
I haven't had
update.
any scheduling conflicts.
So
I have not said that he could not come. So don't put that on me.
then I will take that only because of what's been going on lately with the jail. That's on me.
I haven't declined anybody that wanted to make a report. We'd be happy to have him, Mr. Supervisor Poppy. So
We have a
Sounds
meeting
like
tomorrow.
his-
We have a
sounds
meeting
like-
tomorrow and I will bring it up again.
sounds like his presence is desired. How's that?
Very good.
So get him on the schedule.
I will do that.
All right. Any other questions, corrections on minutes? All right. No recess. Play on your own time. First reading of ordinance. We have none, correct? Consideration of resolutions. If you're ready for the first one.
A resolution approving transfer of funds, budget adjustment, UWEX intern grant. Fiscal impact, receipt of 3,500 James Crowley Foundation funds to hire intern.
Do I have a motion? Supervisor Romd and second by Supervisor Lukes. Discussion, questions? All right, apparently that resolution is written crystal clear. Very well, whenever we're prepared to vote. So we're ready to register. Make sure that you push confirm. Supervisor Patricia, you need to push confirm. There we go. Got it. All right, looks like we've got 8. Langto, Supervisor Langto, did you push confirm? The blue on the right? There we go. Okay,
Not yet.
try it, push it, vote again and then push confirm. There we go. We have 18 yes, 2 absent, motion carries. Whenever you're ready for the next resolution.
A resolution approving transfer of funds, unspent and surplus 2021 funds. See attached for budget transfer requests.
I have a motion.
Move to approve.
Supervisor Lazansky, second by Supervisor Kroll. Discussion, questions? All right, whenever we're ready to register your votes, you may do so. All right, 18 yes. 18 in favor, resolution passes. Whenever you're ready for the next resolution.
A resolution granting the petition for bridge aid, Town of Lincoln. $3,850 from County Aid Bridge Fund.
Supervisor Poppy moves. Is there a second? Supervisor Augustine? Any questions on the motion which you have before you? All right. Register your votes. 18 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Whenever you're ready for the next resolution.
A resolution authorizing an application for an acceptance of recreational trail programs grant. Anapee Trail Maintenance, Bridge Decking, Trail Resurfacing. Fiscal impact, 8,000 county contribution, 9,000 Friends of Anapee contribution, 28,000 DNR contribution.
Okay, do I have a motion? Supervisor Yonke, second by Supervisor Haskey. Any questions, discussion of the motion? All right. You may register your vote. Supervisor Agamite, Supervisor Agamite, is there a good go? Supervisor Kennard. All right. 18 yes, none opposed. Motion carries. Whenever you're ready for the next resolution.
A resolution awarding the contract for the County Highway E Kewaunee River Bridge deck replacement. Final costs would vary depending upon the amount of materials used in the project. This project was included in the 2022 Highway Department budget, and any balance not covered by the local road improvement program will be covered by budgeted funds.
Supervisor Bullenweider, second by Supervisor Mastelier. Everybody's fighting over this one. I'm not going to make a comment. We're on live. All right. I want to get reviewed. Any questions, discussion on that? We need a bridge to somewhere. All right. Can we register your vote? $18 yes, none opposed. Motion carries. Consideration of ordinance read at previous county board meeting. There are none. Communications.
A resolution from Monroe County on clean water.
That's it. Kewaunee County events. Supervisor Kennard.
Tomorrow, May 18th, Rural Safety Days at the Fairgrounds in Luxembourg, sponsored by UW Extension and the Public Health Department. It is the 26th year of this event. The event starts at 9 a.m. with a veterans presentation, and then kids will rotate through the stations from 9 to 2. Supervisors are welcome to come out and walk through the event. Just remember, there's a break for the presenters from 11:30 to 12:30. So try to avoid that time frame if you want to see what's going on. Everyone's invited. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other events anyone wishes to share? All right, very well. No comments from the chair. I do, yeah, it's not the end of the world if we can't do it, but I do have a conflict on June 21st. I was going to check and see if June 14th, that does work for Venture Architects and Samuel's group, if it would work for the supervisors to switch that June meeting. Is there, would that be acceptable to the board? Parks and Rec would be able to move up.
Down.
Huh?
We'll look at doing it on the 21st.
21st, we would just switch. Oh, fabulous. That would help me immensely. I've tried very hard, as you know, to avoid conflicts, try to be here always, but that's just one of those things. And, you know, there we go. So I would need a motion for that. Supervisor Poppy would make that motion. He doesn't want to have to lead it on the 25th. All right. Do I have a second? Supervisor Romden. All in favor of that motion to move to June 14th from 21st? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? No?
Fairgrounds?
Fairgrounds, that would be the other thing. Does it, do we wish to move it to the fairgrounds? We don't need a motion for that, but I think probably, Mr. Felt, that's probably going to be wise.
I would suggest with, because the next two meetings in June and July are going to have a predominant focus on the jail. And we want to be transparent and we want to be accommodating the more space, or do we not have that? Is it not available, Mr. Myers? In July, but not in June.
June.
As long as we can have that,
I don't
that
know if
front
the
half, I
Venture
think we'd be
Architects is
okay.
already set, so we'll make it work.
We'll make it work.
Will work for Deb, hopefully. Okay. Where is the fairgrounds at? Where,
825 3rd Street.
okay, so,
Luxembourg.
Mr. Meyer, Mr. Felt, give me an answer here, or Mr. Myers, does the fairgrounds work or not? Okay. Okay. Well, do we have to set that location here tonight? We could hold.
We do
off
not,
on that.
Mr. Chair.
All right, so the location will be forthcoming. All right,
Is that 6 o'clock?
it would still be 6 o'clock,
Thank you.
yes. August 16th is proposed. Does that work for folks?
Move to approve that day.
Supervisor Romden moves. Is there a
August.
second? Supervisor Poppy? What's that? August 16th. August 16th at 6 is the proposed. Point C? Okay. That one works. We will, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So
July 19th.
do we have a motion?
Change to the
Any,
14th.
they're quite, okay. Motion to adjourn. Super, well, yes.
I'd like to say, when with the meeting, I will find a way to be here for the June meeting, because I do feel the jail is extremely important and I owe that to my district. If it'd be possible to try to get changes as soon as possible with my job, I'm gonna have to call off a trip or something else because I do need to plan these in order to plan my schedule about 6 weeks in advance. And I never ask the board for a special consideration, but I do feel that if I'm here, that I want to make sure that I can represent the folks in my district.
Very good. Thank you. Supervisor Vollenweider? Is there a second? Supervisor Kennard? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is adjourned. Thank you.